is the Internet Court of Truth and Lies. The function of the court is if you have something that you think might be true or you think might be a lie and you believe it, then you can take it to a group of jurors. Collectively, you'll dissect whether it's a truth or a lie. What happens is the plaintiff, the person who is asking the question of what other people think, almost invariably learns something that is interesting to him. Often, a lot of people learn something because everybody is contributing their own verdict, their own dissection. The trial today, I'm the plaintiff. The title of the trial is It's Okay to Lie. This is a Medium article that I wrote that the first half of it is sort of satirical. It says, it's okay to lie. Now that Trump is president, he's taught us that being a liar is an okay thing to be. Why can't everybody be a liar? Since if I can lie, I'm a lot freer than I was when I was not allowed to lie. The first half of this is saying, isn't this wonderful? Trump has freed me up, has made me a happier person. There was a small problem with that. And the real topic of this trial is the small problem is an aspect of a vastly larger problem. And a vastly larger problem is that divisive lying works to get you power. In other words, lying works if what you're after is power or control over other people. It works, and it works all the time. Not every instance, but it's worked throughout history. It will continue to work. It will never stop working. George Washington realized this. The main theme of his farewell address is you should eschew, you should not listen to people who divisively lie. Do not vote for them. Do not promote them. Do not give them any power, because people who divisively lie are socially destructive. This is what George Washington said. Don't listen to these people. Please don't listen to these people. It's the best thing you can do for democracy. And the way he actually put it was, if you're a patriot of liberty, you will ignore or stay away from people who are not allowed power. That's his theme. That was George Washington in 1797 or something. What I found interesting, and I'm going to play it here for a second, is George Washington had a contemporary biographer. The contemporary biographer was a guy named Mason Locke Weems. And he was the rector of Mount Vernon Parish, which is where George Washington lived. He wrote the only contemporary biography of George Washington while Washington was still alive. He sold this biography because he not only wrote the book, he printed the book, and he walked farm to farm selling it. Actually made a living selling the books he wrote, which is interesting. The thing that I find most interesting about Weems is if Weems was lying in his book, surely he wouldn't have sold the book, because the people he was selling the book to knew George Washington. He was alive then. This was Mount Vernon Parish. And if you've ever been to Washington, D.C., Mount Vernon Parish is not big. It's a church parish. And that's where Weems was selling his book. People liked it. Weems was the writer of the book and the printer and the seller. The book changed a little bit from its first publication, which was 1801 or something like that. In 1803-ish or 1802-ish, it contained the cherry tree story. This is Weems' claim. Later biographers who did never know George Washington certainly didn't know Weems. they questioned Weems whether he was lying or not in his book. I've read the people who were questioning it. They were just being academics and saying they didn't prove that George Washington actually cut down that cherry tree. Nobody saw the tree, this kind of stuff. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God. So what I'm going to do is play the actual text that Weems wrote, which is the cherry tree story that George Washington never lied. Here we go.
Pa, said George very seriously, do I ever tell lies? No, George. I thank God you do not, my son, and I rejoice in the hope you never will. At least you shall never, from me, have cause to be guilty of so shameful a thing. Many parents indeed even compel their children to this vile practice, barbarously beating them for every little fault. Hence, on the next offense, the little terrified creature slips out a lie, just to escape the rod. But as to yourself, George, you know I have always told you, and now tell you again, that whenever by accident you do anything wrong, which must often be the case, as you are but a poor little boy yet, without experience or knowledge, you must never tell a falsehood to conceal it. But come bravely up, my son, like a little man, and tell me of it. Instead of beating you, George, I will but the more honor and love you for it, my dear. The following anecdote is a case in point. It is too valuable to be lost and too true to be doubted, for it was communicated to me by the same excellent lady who knew Washington in his home with him. When George, said she, was about 6 years old, he was made the wealthy master of a hatchet, of which, like most little boys, he was immediately fond, and was constantly going about chopping everything that came in his way. One day, in the garden, he unluckily tried the edge of his hatchet on the body of a beautiful young English cherry tree, which he barked so terribly that I don't believe the tree ever got the better of it. The next morning his father, finding out what had befallen his tree, which by the by was a great favorite, came into the house. Nobody could tell him anything about it. Presently George and his hatchet made their appearance. George, said his father, do you know who killed that beautiful little cherry tree yonder in the garden? This was a tough question, and George staggered under it for a moment, but quickly recovered himself. Looking at his father, with the sweet face of youth brightened with the inexpressible charm of all-conquering youth, bravely cried out, I cannot tell a lie, Pa. You know I can't tell a lie. I did cut it with my hatchet. Run to my arms, you dearest boy, cried his father in transports. Run to my arms. Glad am I, George, that you killed my tree, for you have paid me 1,000-fold. Such an act of heroism in my son is worth more than 1,000 trees, though blossomed with silver, and their fruits of purest gold. It was in this way, by interesting at once both his heart and head, that Mr. Washington conducted George with great ease and pleasure along the happy paths of virtue. But knowing that his beloved charge, soon to be a man, would be left exposed to numberless temptations, both from himself and from others, his heart is to possess the surest defense against vice, and the best of all motives to virtue and happiness. M.L. Weems, 1800.
That's the story of this cherry tree. Weems's biography is not currently in press, but you can buy used copies of it for almost like $1. And it's never been converted to Audible. It's a great read, a short book. You can literally buy copies that date back to 1812 type dates easily, cheaply. The other thing I wanted to say was George Washington's father died when George was 11 years old. His older brother was 14 years older than him, and he was a military man. He took possession of this 11-year-old and raised him afterwards. His older brother was in the militia. At least part of that time he was in Georgia, so he was 500 miles away. But George was with his brother growing up through his teenage years, learning how to be a soldier. That's a little bit of detail on George Washington. What I'm going to do is go over what I'm saying, that President Trump now taught all of us it's okay to lie. What's important about that is this is real. A lot of people now believe it's okay to lie. And what they're going to find out is it works. Divisive lying works to get you power. And what makes it incurable is that it works. That's what makes it incurable. That's what psychology says. That's what we know. Because you can't be talked out of lying once you find out what you can get by lying. The problem with the president is he divisively lies all the time. Is teaching new generations of people, including adults, that it's okay to lie. Once you get into it and just find out it works, it can get you power. That's what lying gets you, is essentially power. That's how sociopaths happen. And if you become murderous, that's how psychopaths happen. So the problem is it works. Twice President Trump has taught us all that it's okay to lie. For some of us who will not lie intentionally, everybody lies all the time to somebody, but will never intentionally lie, and certainly not divisively lie. You'll never see me, I hope, disparage other people and tell you about how certain people, certain types of people are just stupid, or certain types of people can't be trusted, or all these other things. That unless I'm telling you the truth on the trust thing, and I give you evidence, or I believe that I've got evidence that they can't be trusted, and I've properly delineated the group, so I'm not lying. There are lots of people who will not lie. George Washington was one of them. I'm saying it is true. It is a lie that twice President Trump has now taught us it's okay to lie, which is a weird way to put it. And I remember having the problem figuring out whether to call this a truth or a lie. It's true in one sense, it's a lie in another. It's a lie in that for a lot of people, he hasn't taught them it's okay to lie. But for a lot of other people, it's true. So is it the truth? I said, hopefully mankind will finally decide that people like Trump who lied to achieve power and money should never be given access to either. Is it the whole truth? It is the whole truth that this should be a lie. Anyone who believes this is most certainly a sociopath or a psychopath like Trump, who's achieved his power and money through criminal activities, should be punished and not rewarded. One thing that is true that we also know is that once you are a liar and have learned that it works, then you will defend other liars. You will say, well, they're not really being bad, when they are. Is it nothing but the truth? It is nothing but the truth that this is a lie. In other words, that some people will not fall for Trump and will continue to not lie, despite the fact that they know they could get power and money if they did. What's the deceit? I say that the deceit is not factually true. He's not taught all of us that it's okay to lie. Sadly, he's taught some of us who wouldn't have done it otherwise that it's now okay to lie. Trump intends to lie. He knows he's lying. He's doing it for a reason. He knows it works. As you grow older and get more and more skilled at it, you reach levels of skill that you see in Trump in using divisive lying to get power. So it's very much intended by Trump. What's the motivation behind? The motivation is to persuade you to hate something or someone. Divisive lying, that's the motivation behind it. What's the social acceptability of the lie? I agree with George Washington. It is unacceptable to lie. It is acceptable to Trump, his voters, and anybody who decides to experiment with it. They can easily find out that they can get what they want with it because it works. It does not make it socially acceptable. What label would improve the social acceptability of the truth or the lie? I would say that this is factually untrue, but I'm really saying this is factually untrue because some people do not fall for it. in having said that, before I get to asking all the jurors to give me a 20 or 30-second summary of their verdicts, I wanted to mention I've just written a new article on Medium. The chat has that new article. It's wearing a black band. So here's a black band. And you can make it with a 3/8 inch or a 1/2 inch or piece of Velcro. It's essentially free. You can get a 50-foot roll of this stuff for $10. If you're wearing a black band, that means you're declaring to the world, you do not lie. You're saying, I don't lie.
Oh, not that you're mourning those who've been troubled by lying.
And you're mourning those who are harmed by the people.
Harmed by lying, yeah.
But I don't lie. You can buy 50 feet of this stuff. And so you can make a lot of these. Now, I actually give you a suggested retail price, sell them to a friend for $5 each. And you sell 2 of those that are 6 inches or 8 inches long a piece, and you've just made back your money, and then the rest of them are just pure profit.
Telling you, I'd make a killing out of those.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea because it tells people I don't lie. I know it works, and I won't do it.
Need to put truthcourt.net on there, Bob. That way we could
I don't know how to print stuff on a Velcro. I don't have the time to try to figure this out. But maybe if somebody who knows the people at Velcro knows how to do it, they could put some print on something. But the main thing is it's just a signal that I don't lie.
Has anybody asked you, what are you wearing that for?
I just say, it means I don't lie divisively. And I'll have a couple of free bands in my pocket, and I'll give the guy a band. So this sounds like fun, particularly because it's so incredibly inexpensive. And I put the little fuzzy side out. My wife agrees that by putting the fuzzy side out, even the girl likes this because it looks like a nice little bracelet. So what I'm going to do is go through the jurors and of the 20 or 30-second summary of your verdict and whether or not believe me or believe this is the truth. Juror 1.
Yeah, I think that's me. Linguistically, this was incredibly difficult to follow. I've said before that the unnecessarily expansive definition of lie that keeps getting thrown around, it doesn't help. It actually makes things confusing. And so using this framing, essentially, it's lie is now anything that I think is bad. And I get that. I don't oppose that. I agree with you. Trump's bad. I'm 100% with you on that. But in terms of framing and in terms of this product, this is almost impossible to parse. I'm with you ideologically, but this was very difficult to work with.
Yeah. So, Brian, I'm going to continue to chalk this up to the fact that you're a really good lawyer. The word lie is something in the law. It has a very specific meaning. And I'm a computational cognitive neuroscientist. And my definition of lie is anything anybody will call a lie.
And that's the point.
Yeah, I know. It's what we study is anything that anybody will call a lie. And then what Mendaciousology does is it tries to figure out how the brain is computing these things to differentiate them. That's the reason I do the taxonomy of lies.
Yeah, that's fine.
So
What Chris is going to understand, you have to back off and you have to accept the common definition of words. You can't accept the academic definition, or you just leave a confusing product. So that's,
So anyway, I get all that.
Can I just say, this is a classic kind of error that I come up with in all my cases. I talk to the plaintiffs a lot about how to frame your accusation. And this would have been you saying, is it okay to lie? But you've marked that as a lie. So you're saying you're actually asking the reverse. Whereas if you just mark that accusation as being.
So I could have, and in fact, that's what I said a minute ago, was I said I had a problem deciding whether to call it a lie or the truth. And I called it a lie because it's not true that everybody is going to start lying because Trump is a liar, which is what the actual statement says. It's okay to lie. Everybody can start lying. It's not okay. And so it's a lie. So I took that interpretation of that sentence, and I didn't do it consistently through the verdicts, by the way. So just to be clear, I understand that.
You were working as if the title of the course of the thing was the accusation,
Yeah.
rather than what used to
Yeah.
be the markup. Yeah.
I was trying to be clear about what I was doing, but yeah, this is one where the sort of the easy way out was to call it the truth, okay, but the hard way out was to call it a lie, and I chose the hard way, which is typical of me. So I always do the worst possible thing. This is just a property of me. So juror 2.
That's me, Bob. Yeah. So yeah, Brian and Andrew actually said what I was thinking and was gonna say. But yeah, if I look at, and I often tell the plaintiffs in the cases that I moderate as well, look at your accusation and your verdict should directly link to your accusation. But now your accusation, I just want to add, made it even more confusing because did Trump say it twice? Is that the lie? Or did Trump, because this is merely a statement. He didn't say this, that he's taught everyone that it's okay to lie. It's your
Yeah,
statement.
so I'm assuming that people, I'm assuming, yes. So what I was doing was I was assuming that we already do know that it's true that Trump is teaching a lot of people
Yeah,
that it's okay to
that really.
lie. Okay. And this is very unfortunate because it works. If there was a pill that I could give everybody to inoculate them against that,
Bob,
okay,
yeah,
it would be great, but there is no pill.
I'm struggling to reconcile with it that it works. You said it, I think, 3 or
It
4 times
works.
that it works, and I'm struggling inside of me to agree with it because
If so,
at some point it works only for the people who believe his lies. We have to qualify that. It doesn't work with me.
yeah, so it works for the person who's lying. That's what I'm saying. It gives him power or her power.
But it
Okay.
doesn't if there are people who don't believe the lie. That's
Yes.
Yeah.
If it keeps him in power, even if I know he's lying, that means
Yeah.
it's working for him.
They know he's lying. So everybody, I actually think that most everybody knows he's lying. They'll say it. Okay. But that doesn't help because what they're finding out is that you can be president of the United States doing that.
Yeah. I just want to add a local South African station. And they just had, of all the statements Donald Trump has said, he knows about Bitcoin more than anyone else. He knows about nuclear energy more than anyone else. He knows about microchips more than anyone else. He knows about electric cars more than anyone else. It was just a whole bunch of his sayings. I was like, I was shocked. I said, I can't believe he's actually said those things. And no one's ever had the guts to say, you know what, shut up.
I know. So I think they have said that to him and then they lose their jobs. It's his deal. So the key is you're now over in the group of people that he now calls stupid or idiots or whatever he's going to call them, or naive or whatever he'll say, or nasty or whatever he do. And then he says, we can't vote this guy in, or we can't allow this person to stay, or you're fired.
Yeah, at some point it's going to catch up with him. That's my belief. At some.
So yeah, so I said it's incurable. I didn't say it's uncatchable. Yes, these real psychopaths usually don't make it very far before they're caught. Sadly, one of the things that we do allow in the United States, and I don't think is a terrible thing, I think it's bad, but I don't think it's terrible, is a CEO can be a sociopath. And I think that's common because they will lie in order to get to their spot. And they will rule as autocrats inside of companies, which we allow in the United States. But we were supposed to be disallowing it in elected office, which we've evidently failed to do.
Yeah, I just want to say that some of it I agree with, some of it I don't, because I don't feel like he's telling everyone it's okay to lie per se, but I do understand where you're coming from. But yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah, I don't
much.
think he's telling people it's okay to lie. I think he's demonstrating to people that it's okay to lie.
I can see that point too as well, but I don't know. I have a hard issue with everything with the Trump issue and stuff
Yeah.
and all. But yeah.
03.
Okay, I agree with you that it's not okay to lie. It's not okay to. It says you say it's okay to. Is it okay to lie divisively? So I picked on that word and I said, can a person lie inclusively? Is that possible? That's the opposite.
So the argument is, and this is George Washington's argument, is it's okay to lie inclusively if you're not dividing people up,
Okay.
one person against another, then
That makes
it's okay to lie. George Washington was saying it's okay to lie if it's the damage you will do to democracy if you're patron of liberty is if you lie divisively because you can take power that way because it works.
But
And
you
he
say
said
you
the
won't
only
even
he
lie
said
inclusively, right?
you can't pass a law against it. If the person is insane enough, you can catch him for what he did, like killing his parents. What George Washington said is that there are norms, there are what he called habits. He said there's the law and then there are the habits. And he said you have to respect the habits as much as the law. And divisive lying is a habit, and it's not something you can directly pass a law against, which agrees with what Brian is saying.
Okay, but with you wearing the black band, does that mean you can't even do inclusive lying?
No, it means that I can lie. Well, so I can factually lie all over the place because I don't know something or something like that. But if I lie in order to divide people up, divide people, okay, that's
Okay.
divisive lying. And no, I don't do that. I will lie to a waitress and say, I don't have enough money for a tip. Okay, I've done that when I didn't have a lot of money and where I had a buck in my pocket. So I'll do that, but that's not divisive. That's just lying because I had to lie and I'm not using it to gain power. In fact, I was losing power to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, juror 4.
Yeah, that's me. I don't know. A lot of things occurred to me with this, apart from the confusion over lie and truth and so forth. Is that I reckon that it isn't that Trump really gives us permission to lie, as you talk about. It seems to me that he's allowed the suspension of disbelief, which we always had when we applied it to politicians, to fall. We no longer, I mean, our good manners, accepting politicians as being generally telling the truth, I think we've lost that. I don't think we permit ourselves to see that politicians are really very fallible and to see the truth about them, which we couldn't before. We could never acknowledge that the politicians were just liars without sounding cynical and untrustworthy ourselves. So we're allowed now to be true to our cynicism in a way that we weren't before.
So this argument, the one I'm making, is divisive lying. A lot of politicians will make promises they can't keep. That's really not divisive lying. That's just lying. There's plenty of kinds of lying. The stuff that George Washington said don't do is divisive lying. He said that's what will destroy the democracy.
Yes, I understand that, but divisive lying is a very broad church when you come to analyze what it is.
It is broad.
The other.
Yeah, it is broad, but you see it when people besmirch or disparage other people.
True.
And they're doing it in a way that is actually not truthful, or their motivation is just to gain power and it's just an outright.
I think it's a sort of relief, really, that we can now look at politicians. We can have the scales fall from our eyes for politicians in a divisive way. But the second thing I wanted to say was that Trump overstates and misdirects with his lies you wrong-foots media savvy folk who expect all this to be good mannered and rather like habits that Washington was talking about. But I think what he's really doing is he's suggesting that he occupies a different universe to the rest of us, a slightly different universe. And that is why we like him and want to follow him, because he's somewhere else that maybe we should be or need to be or have to be.
Yeah, I say that in the article that the voter like me can rest assured we can be free and rich without a care in the world, just like those other guys were always allowed to lie all the time. Okay. In other words, because Trump is rich and because he's achieved power, And because he seems to have everything that anybody could possibly want, and he can order anybody to do anything, then lying must be okay.
I do exactly what you're saying. However, I don't think that's necessarily the interpretation we will take from it. I don't see Trump and think, hey, great, now I can lie. All I can see, Trump, is that, yes, politicians are like that. I feel much less inclined to give them any kind of benefit of the doubt now.
So I actually know, I know politicians that will never divisively lie. I can name them. Y'all won't know who they are, but I can name. But I'll tell you one that I don't think ever divisively lied, which is Obama. And I don't think Biden divisively lied ever.
Oh,
I know.
I have to debate on that one because I believe.
So but I have other people that I know. That there was a guy who is in Georgia. Remember, I'm from Georgia, who is the lieutenant governor, and he just converted from being a Republican to a Democrat, which is a big deal for him to do that. But he had a real problem with divisively lying, and he won't do it. And so he's now switched parties. He just won't have anything to do with the people who do. And it just happened in the last 24 hours. This guy just switched parties, or 48 hours, whatever. So juror 6.
Correct. If there was a universal law that it was generally okay to tell lies, then life would rapidly become very difficult as everyone would feel free to lie or tell the truth if they choose. It would be impossible to take any statement seriously because telling lies may become a habit, and if a person regularly indulges in one of wrongdoing, they may well become more comfortable with wrongdoing in general. That is all that I had to say. Thank you.
So I think that there is a distinction here between lies and divisive lies. It's the divisive lies that can get power. That's the problem. A lot of people are challenged with the truth who do not divisively lie. They just don't remember things very well, and they make things up all the time. But I know people like this who they don't divisively lie. They don't lie with the intention of putting you in a class of people who are bad. Okay. They just don't do it. The thing that's not permitted is the divisive lie. So juror 7.
Yeah, so I basically agreed with you, especially when you said that, yeah, okay, it's okay to lie if it's like in a one-on-one situation. But what I did add, since you did mention President Trump, I said that I believe that lying to others, especially if you have a major influence over a group of people for your own personal gain, it's unethical, and obviously it does end up harming the people that you're lying to. But then we also have to remember that this is the society that we live in. It's our current reality. A lot of people have gained so much from lying to other people that it's actually insane. It's a very sad reality when you have to think about it, especially in the case of President Trump. If you're lying to your people, like that just says a lot about you and like your character, what you stand for, things like that. So
Yeah.
I do agree with it.
Yeah, I think that, let me give you an example of people who are lying, but we actually applaud and they're doing a good thing, which are actors. People who are actors, when they're acting, they're lying left and right because they're not actually those people. They are pretending to be those people. Lying itself is not bad, but divisive lying is bad. That's the one that George Washington pointed out as the bad version of it. There are lots of forms of lying. It's the best list I've seen that's a content list is either these books on cheating and deception or the Wikipedia entry on fallacies, which are different forms of lies that people will do. In the fallacies, there are some fallacies that are divisive fallacies. So you can actually go to the Wikipedia page and they don't get grouped that way, but you can read them and see it's a very long list of fallacies that people engage in.
I just want to start off by saying it's obviously not okay to lie in general, even if figures like Donald Trump have normalized it through their actions. These lies erode trust and weaken democratic institutions. Like when a leader lies repeatedly or spreads falsehoods, it doesn't give moral permission for others to do the same. It just simply lowers the standard of public discourse and encourages cynicism. Truth shouldn't be seen as a trend that changes with political behavior. It's a foundational value that should be upheld, especially by those in power. Normalizing dishonesty makes it seem acceptable, even strategic, but in reality, it leads to division and confusion. But to mention my main point, I'm not from the US, but I do think that Trump should not be a political leader.
George Washington would tell you that too. And I'm 100% sure that George Washington, were he alive, would tell you that. All you have to do is read his farewell address. And what I can tell you is don't read somebody's summary of his farewell address, read his own words. But when somebody tries to tell you what his farewell address said, you need to read the whole document, and in the original, you'll find it a little bit hard to read. It'll take you a couple of days to figure out how to read it because he uses words like, for example, he uses, instead of the word norm, he uses the word habit. And it's misleading when you read it. He says laws and habits. What's a habit? It turns out he means norm. And he says a properly thought out norm is what he's basically saying. And he says directly, you cannot legislate out divisive lying. It simply must be a responsibility of every patriot of liberty to not accept it and to not vote for people who divisively lie. And he said that's the only way out because there's a place where the law can't go. There are lots of places where the law can't go, but that's one place. And for a lot of the reasons that Brian was talking about earlier. And he's right. He's completely right about what he's saying. Brian, I just wanted to make sure you understood that I agreed with you.
That's the thing. I don't disagree with where you're coming from academically, but linguistically, I'm looking at selling this product.
So that's good. We'll see y'all next Thursday.
Okay, bye everyone.